Good evening.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? Welcome to this evening's presentation, a Birds of a Feather session. This is kind of experimental. We would like to tell you a true story of something that Josh and I did. It was a little over a month ago. It was August 16th. The actual story starts about a year and a half ago, though. And it was a project that I started to work on. I started to get some ideas about. And, well, it all came to fruition about a month ago. So we'd like to walk you through that story. Some of you have heard me. You've taken some classes from me in the last year or so, and I had mentioned that, hey, I had an interest in getting an Enigma machine from World War II. But, you know, it's hard to get, and there's all the stuff that you got to do. And the original plan for this, oh, by the way, I should introduce me and my co-presenter. My name is Ed Scotus. I'm an instructor with the SANS Institute. I'm the author of SANS Security 504 and 560, an instructor with those things. And my lovely co-presenter here is Mr. Joshua Wright. He's the author of SANS Security 617 on wireless security, and also his new class, SANS Security 575, which is mobile device security, and it's awesome. It's totally awesome. All right, so thank you for joining us for this. So the original idea was that Josh and I would buy an Enigma, and we'd put together a little presentation, and we'd kind of make a movie out of it. Yeah, a movie. And the movie was going to be in the style of one of the stupidest movies, well, ever. You're familiar with Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, right? Big fans of that here? Right? Really? All right. All right. So the original presentation was supposed to be called Scoto and Josh Buy an Enigma. Oh, Scoto and Josh Buy an Enigma. So we put together like a little movie kind of thing here based on the original Harold and Kumar, and that was the plan. But then we actually went and bought the Enigma, and something happened that changed the whole plan for the name of this presentation.
It changed our lives.
It changed our lives, yes, yes. And you'll see, we have the Enigma picture here, and then, well, there's a brain, and there's some sort of awkward green juice coming off of the brain. Yes, because of what happened in our presentation, or in our lives, we retitled the presentation, Please Keep Your Brain Juice Off My Enigma. Okay? It's a true story by Ed Scotus and Josh Wright. I'd like to thank Josh for all of his hard work in making this happen. So, you ready to go?
I am.
All right, here we go. Here's our adventure. What you're about to hear is an absolutely true story. All right, and we're going to give you as much details of this story as we can. We're going to start out by talking about one of the stars of the story, the Enigma machine, and talking about its importance, talking about its relevance, talking about how it was hacked, and how that hack actually changed our world, okay? And then we'll talk about, well, how we got involved with an Enigma machine, and we'll show you a little bit of information about it, and then we'll discuss this bizarre situation associated with brains. All right, so let me turn it over to Josh to talk to you about the Enigma.
Thank you, Ed. So the Enigma machine, if you're not familiar, was initially a device invented by the Germans, by a German inventor, to use for secret business communication. It never really took off, but it was then later adopted and enhanced significantly for privatizing communications and used extensively during World War II. Now this is a picture of an Enigma machine here, and the operator would type a message in the keystrokes here on the keyboard, and lights would show up, and that would be the enciphered message, and then you use a similar mechanism to decrypt the machine. The operator would set some components such as the reflector, the plug board, and the position and order of something called rotors to be able to make that key information unique and to be able to make that machine and that message private. And variants of the Enigma machine were used throughout the war. Now, during the war, the inability for the Allied forces to crack the Enigma machine was really a detriment. And for a significant period of time, the Germans were attacking, the German U-boats were attacking transport services and cargo along the east coast of the United States. And then, many, many lives were lost, and this was really a very difficult time during World War II. A lot of people spent time working on cracking the Enigma machine, not the least of which the Polish, the British, and then later the Americans. And it really is a very amazing story because it's really a start. It started with the Polish, and they did amazing work, okay? Marian Rejewski, okay, did a lot of this work from Poland, okay? I was told that's how. So, he did a lot of the work, and then they got stuck, and they didn't have the resources to continue the work. So from there, the Polish shared their information with Alan Turing, my personal hero, okay, in the researchers at Bletchley Park in the UK. They did some amazing work and cracked the Enigma and did a lot of amazing things. And then they got to a point where they couldn't do any more because of the developments of the Enigma machine. And then they turned it over to US and Joseph Deshkin, NCR, okay, National Cash Register Company, really did some amazing work cracking and recovering and being able to break the Enigma machine. Now, amazingly, Winston Churchill said himself that he believes that cracking the Enigma machine ended the war by 2 years earlier. 2 years earlier. Now, just, if we just average out lives, that's millions of lives on both sides that were saved by an earlier end to the war. It's just an amazing piece of history, and it really is an amazing technology. Thank you. So, a little bit about Enigma cryptography, okay? The Enigma machine is a polyalphabetic substitution cipher using mechanical stepping rotors to be able to encode a message. Prior to the use of the Enigma machine, most cryptography was substitution mechanism, but static. The Enigma machine did something different. Instead of applying a static pattern to encrypt or encode a message, the Enigma machine used a mechanism where each subsequent letter changed depending on the previous letter that was used. And it really dramatically changed how cryptography was done, and it actually, frankly, introduced some very interesting things that we still use today. The operator would set settings like the rotor. This is a picture of a couple of rotors here, and you can see there's numbers on the rotor. The operator would set the order in the position of those rotors. Initially, they were numbered 1 through 3, later 1 through 5, and I think up to 8 eventually throughout the war. Okay? Inside the rotor, you can see a blown out picture here. This is one example of a rotor, and you can see this wiring mechanism here. What positions on the rotor were connected to what output pins was a mystery to the Polish researchers and later to the British researchers, and there was a lot of uniqueness in this machine. Now, how unique was the Enigma? How many possible keys were there? That's subject to debate, but at the maximum, the Enigma machine could encode a key space of 3 times 10 to the power of 114, okay? Now that is a mighty big number, and it's too big for most of us to even fathom. To give you an example, 10 to the power of 82 is the number of atoms that foreseeably exist in our universe, okay? So just to give you, an idea of how big and how immense that number is.
And the Germans thought it was uncrackable. And because they thought it was uncrackable, they trusted the security of all the messages they were sending, because after all, they were using the Enigma. There were some folks there that were a little bit nervous, especially the guy that ran the German Navy. So he started to change the Enigma that he was using, adding more rotors and adding additional elements to it. But most of the folks on the German side figured this was just unbreakable, and that lulled them into some complacency.
Okay. Now, the Enigma keying operation was interesting as well. Enigma operators would get a daybook. They would have a series of settings that they would use to apply the position and the order of how the Enigma machine was actually set up to encode the message for the day. So there was things like Walschenlag. Walschenlag? Okay. Walschenlager. That's like lager. That's right. Walschenlager,
yeah.
okay? That's the choice of the rotors and the order of the rotors. 1, 3, 2, 1, 4, 5, for example, okay? Also, Ringstellung, the ring setting of each rotor. Remember those 26 positions we saw on the breakout? What position do we start with? Steckerverbindungen, okay? The Steckerverbindungen, thank you. Pretty close? Was that right?
Not bad, not bad.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
They just called it the Stecker for short. It's the Stecker.
We call it the Stecker board, okay?
Yeah.
The Stecker board was on the bottom where we transposed individual characters to each other, okay? Now, what an Enigma operator would do when receiving a message is he would get the receiving message on the Enigma machine, okay? He would get this over Morse code, rather. He would receive this incoming message over Morse code. The first 3 letters, the first 6 letters rather, he would decrypt on the Enigma machine. And this would reveal a repeating sequence of 3 characters each, JLW, JLW here. He would then set the rotors to JLW. Some of the rotors were numbered, 1 through 26. Others actually had letters on them, or they had a little lookup sheet to be able to make that transposition a little bit easier. Then he would take the remainder of the message and then decrypt that message subsequently. This is amazing to me because it's an example of per-message keying that we still use in protocols like wireless protocols and TKIP and CCMP and all these interesting protocols that we talk about in science classes today were being used way back then.
SSL session keys?
Yes, exactly. So the interesting thing here was that the transmitting operator would actually choose this key, and that actually introduced some vulnerabilities in the system as well.
Sure. Notice, though, also you have hello XED. There was no space key on there, so they would use X's as a space. All right, this is interesting and useful as well.
Okay. So there were some pretty significant implementation flaws in the Enigma machine. The lack of input character space was a big one. There was only 26 keys on the Enigma machine, no space as Ed points out, also no numbers. So they spelled out a lot of words, which reduced the actual entropy or the randomness of how the machine could actually be used. The plug board was also reciprocal. So when I set that stecker board, right, and when I set the stecker board, it would map A to N with a little wire and 2 plugs. Well, N would also be reciprocal back to A. But the biggest problem, the thing that was really significant downfall of the Enigma machine, is that it could not encode a letter to itself. If you're encrypting the letter A, it will never produce an A as an encrypted output value. And that was a significant failure in the design of the machine. Combined with these implementation flaws were use flaws, okay? That daybook that had all the day keys was used for a 24-hour period and changed at midnight every day. And that was an extended amount of time to use any key, even though they were choosing their own keys. Another mechanism is, remember how they did that double encipherment of the key, JLW, JLW? So the recipient knew he decrypted it properly, but the researchers that were trying to break the Enigma machine also knew that was a property of the system, and they recognized that they could learn something about the key from the repetition of those characters, knowing that the decrypted version of the first 3 is the same as the next 3 characters as well. Okay? We had known plaintext and ciphertext pair recovery. There were common messages that could be interpreted that we knew the plaintext for. So for example, weather stations would report the weather, or some stations would say, nothing to report today. And then the Allied forces would catch both the ciphertext and the plaintext, and then have a corresponding value to work with. One of the big issues was the use of a weak key selection, sometimes called Sillies, okay? C-I-L-L-I-E, okay? Now, Silly was the name of a German Enigma operator's girlfriend. And whenever he chose that 3-letter key, he always used his girlfriend's name. And now that became a weakness because now we're encoding predictable and redundant keys in the use of the Enigma machine, and that contributed to the downfall of the platform as well.
So user-chosen message keys. So they'd often do things like QWE, because at the top of the keyboard, that's what you have, or BER, first 3 letters of Berlin, or LIN, or HIT, first 3 letters of Hitler, and then Sillies. The guy would do CIL, CIL, because that was his girlfriend's name. Oops.
Okay. Now, cribs were an interesting thing that became a use point for the Enigma machine as well. What the Allied forces realized was that because the Enigma machine can never encode a plaintext character to a matching ciphertext character, they could take a big block of ciphertext that they know, they capture the ciphertext, and what they think might be the plaintext. So for example, the name of an officer or somebody involved in the battle, or a location, or a weather report content, or nothing to report. And then what they would do is do something called crib dragging. Okay? So here, for example, we've got our crib, Markworth space, or the X character, attacked. And then here's some ciphertext down here at the bottom. And I want to see, can this ciphertext match up to the plaintext as well? Okay? Now, if we look at this here, this will obviously not work, because M in plaintext and M in ciphertext, that will never happen in Enigma, so they would drag it over. Okay? And now we look at this. M-L-A-E-R-I, nothing matches up until, oh, C-C. Okay? That can't be the plain text that's associated with that ciphertext. So they would drag that crib again. Okay? When they drag that crib one third time, now none of the observed plain text characters match characters in the ciphertext. And that would be a big hint to the researchers, to the Allied forces, trying to crack that key, because that might be plain text that's represented in ciphertext there. Okay. So what happened was, initially the Polish, then the British, then the US developed what became known as the bomb machine. Now, the name bomb has some interesting history behind it as well. Ed, I think you do this.
Sure. We don't know for sure. There are debatable points about why they called it the bomb, B-O-M-B-E. One of the points of this was they thought it might have been called the bomb, named after the Italian dessert. No, not like the ticking bomb that's going to explode, but if you've had the Italian dessert, it's ice cream with a little bit of chocolate on top of it. And one of the researchers that worked on this really liked that Italian dessert, so they named the machine the bomb. There were other theories as to why it was called that, but nobody actually is able to select which one of those is really accurate. But they called them the bomb machines. There are still some around today. There's some at the National Cryptologic Museum down near Fort Meade. There's also some over in Bletchley Park. So these machines are still there, and, well, occasionally they fire one up.
Now, what these machines did was they took a captured ciphertext message, and they took the crib of what they thought might be the plain text, and they brute forced the key selection information. And they did it mechanically using electrical signals, looking for open paths and closed paths. And it works really, really fast, doing a lot of operations very, very quickly, where at one point in the war, they were decrypting messages as quickly as 20 minutes after a message was received, and then having that key to instantly decrypt everything subsequently later on in the day. So they were doing some really interesting work here. Now, initially, the Polish developed the initial bomb machine, but they didn't have the resources to keep up with the changing Enigma. Bletchley Park and the British and Alan Turing created the next bomb machine, and then eventually, and that bomb machine with Bletchley Park was staffed by the British Wrens, okay? A female force that helped invent a lot of work there. Subsequently, with changes to the Enigma machine, the British were no longer able to crack it anymore, and NCR built their own machine, which was staffed significantly by Navy Waves, the woman Navy force, the first time women were invited to do that kind of work. And it was interesting, we read some of these analysis reports, they were trying to keep from the Navy Waves what they were doing. And I read this one research report from a woman at the NSA, and it was a very, very interesting report. And she was talking about how the US told all the women that, you would be killed for treason if you ever talk about what it is that you're doing here. At the same time, they told them, they tried to make it so they couldn't understand what was going on. So for example, when they soldered the leads together, they numbered them 0 to 25 instead of 1 to 26, presumably because women wouldn't be able to figure out that there were actually 26 leads there, and then get everything together, okay?
It's amazing.
Now, it was amazing, right?
Really
and it was very interesting. The NSA woman that wrote this article just kind of left it at a period at that. And the unspoken word spoke volumes, which I thought was very, very interesting.
The thing that's kind of cool about these bomb machines to me is the Enigma was an electromechanical system in that, well, you would push the Enigma itself, the cipher machine, you'd push the keys, and there was no motor in it. It would make an electrical connection, and it would advance based on the pressure you're applying to the keys. All right, so a simple electromechanical system. These things were special purpose computers. They were focused on just one thing, that is cracking the Enigma, but they had motors in them that would drive them as they went forward, and they had to have these operators, and they'd have to be configured carefully, and that's what the Waves and the Wrens did. Really cool stuff.
So this is just an amazing story to me. When I read about the Navy Waves, I told my daughter, who's 11, all about it. And I said, look at this amazing thing that we did. Look at the amazing work the Polish did, the British did, the Americans did. They worked together, not always well and not always willingly, but they worked together to fight a common enemy at the time. And it was an amazing success story. The technological advances we made were amazing. These heroic mathematicians, sailors, and soldiers who gave their lives to this. And there are many stories of people who lost their lives from sinking U-boats, trying to recover the Enigma machine, the daybook, and then coming up to the surface and then never making it back up again. People gave their lives and did amazing work to be able to recover the Enigma machine and to be able to break it, and really it just ended the war. Like Winston Churchill said 2 years earlier, the number of lives that were saved is just staggering and an amazing thing. And it's just an amazing piece of history. Okay? Also amazing, the secret of how the Enigma was broken was not even publicly known until 1974. Okay? The Germans never knew the Enigma machine was broken. Nobody knew until 1974, and really not until the 80s did we really start to comprehend what actually went on. I mean, when I was a student in school, we learned about World War II. I think those books were wrong now. I think because they were written before the 80s, I think that really they all need to be updated significantly.
And there's some fascinating things about this 1974 situation. From what I understand, when it was first announced that the Brits and the US had cracked the Enigma, a lot of people that were working on it, including some of the Wrens and the Waves, they were stunned. They thought they would take that secret to their death. Or if they revealed it, they would be killed because of that secret. They couldn't believe that this information was actually finally published. Also, some other interesting things came out about this that are going to be very relevant later in the talk. You see, the US and the British knew that we had cracked the Enigma at the end of the war. The Germans and the Russians, specifically Soviets, did not know that we had cracked it. So at the end of the war, the Americans gathered a whole bunch of the machines and we destroyed them. The Brits were more clever about this. They gathered a whole bunch of the machines and shoved them into East Germany with the hope that the East Germans would continue to use them, which they did in the late 40s, 50s, and up into the 60s. The Brits also took some of these things and shipped them to their colonies. So they shipped some to India and Hong Kong with the hope that the colonies would continue to use them so the British could continue to read all those messages. So it's interesting that they kept this stuff secret all the way up until 1974. Cool. Next slide. Excellent. All right, so that's a little background on the Enigma itself. And I was reading about this background, studying it and thinking about it, and thinking to myself, wouldn't it be cool to have an Enigma? It'd be kind of fun. Now, every 5 years or so, there's an eBay auction for an Enigma. And these are tough auctions to win. There's lots of bids that happen on there, and short of hacking the auction site, which would be wrong, it's really hard to win that kind of auction. Now, you can buy parts. People will sell rotors, so you can get an individual rotor, or you could buy one of those little plugs for the Stecker, right? You buy one of those plugs. But it'd be cool to have like a whole Enigma. And then in March of 2011, I did a tour of the National Cryptologic Museum. Anybody here ever go to the National Cryptologic? It's awesome, isn't it? If you haven't gone, just go. Really, sometime, if you're outside of DC or outside of Baltimore, because it's right in between the two, you should go to that. It is amazing history there. They don't just cover World War II cryptographic history. They go all the way back to stuff used during the American War for Independence. They talk about stuff for Civil War, et cetera, et cetera. It's really cool stuff. World War I, it's all there. So I went on this tour, and I had a curator that was taking me around on the tour. His name was Patrick. And I said to Patrick, I said, he let me use the Enigma machine. You can go there, and you can use the Enigma, encode a message and decrypt it. They have 8 Enigmas there. Show-offs. 8 Enigmas. And they have a bomb there, too, which is just awesome. Anyway, I said to Patrick, I said, I'd really like to have a replica of an Enigma. I think that would be kind of cool, have it in my office, it'd be kind of fun to play with, that kind of thing. And I didn't want to get like a real one because, those are so rare, it's antique. Just have somebody make an Enigma machine for me. And he says, oh, that's probably doable. What you need to do is hook up with a guy named Jim Aram. So he gave me Jim Aram's email address, and I emailed Mr. Aram saying, excuse me, sir, I understand you're working on a replica of the Enigma system. I would like to buy one. Can you sell me one? And his response was, no. He said it's really hard to make a good Enigma, and he's been working over 10 years and has spent a lot of money building himself a replica Enigma, and it still doesn't work. He's not quite there yet. He said, give it 10 or 15 years, though, and with 3D printing technology, we could all have Enigmas. Oh, all right, well, thanks. So the whole thing kind of fell apart, and that was that. Then there's Yuri. You guys know Yuri Kavitchko? He's one of the chief architects of NetWars. He works with Josh and I over at Counterhack Challenges. Yuri was teaching my SANS 504 course. And he was teaching it in front of a group of students up in Canada. And he mentioned that his crazy boss wanted to buy an Enigma, but couldn't get one. So there was a guy in his class who raised his hand and said, I know someone who's selling an Enigma. Yuri said, really? Yeah, here's his email address. So, well, Yuri gave me the email address for a guy we'll call Dr. David. We're not going to give you his full name because, well, he's requested that we don't. So Dr. David, I contacted Dr. David and said, you know, be really interested in buying a replica of an Enigma machine or maybe actually a full Enigma machine. What do you have? And he says, well, I'm not actually the seller. The seller is unnamed. But I will act as a broker for this deal. And I exchanged email back and forth with Dr. David and ultimately found out who the real seller was, a guy we'll call Dr. Tom. Not giving you his full name, we'll just call him Dr. Tom. He's a retired college professor. He's the author of a fantastic book on enigmas. And they gave me a free copy of the book. So we're negotiating this whole thing, and the delivery was scheduled. It was supposed to be mid-July 2011, over a year ago. Okay? Oh, we're so excited, man. I couldn't wait. It's just really, really cool. And then 2 weeks before I was to take delivery of the Enigma, my wife got sick. Many of you folks know about how she's been very sick. She's doing so good now, really good, okay? But it was June 29th, 2011, we went up to Sloan. They told us that her cancer was back. She needed massive surgery. She needed chemo, radiation. It was really tough times. I appreciate your kind thoughts, your regards, your prayers over the last year or so. But it was tough. I mean, November, December, January, February. She turned the corner a little bit in January and February. March, April, May, she got a little. Then June, she came back hard. So hard. It was just awesome, awesome. Anyway, back in June of 2011, I said to the gentleman, I said, look, I can't do the deal now. I know we got the deal on the table, but my wife is sick. I have to take care of her. I don't know how much time it will take to do that. And from a monetary perspective, I don't know how much of my resources it will require to take care of her. So we called off the deal. They let me keep the free book. Then she started getting better. And I mean, in June, she was doing so well that, well, by July, I contacted Dr. Tom and Dr. David, and I said, you know, have you any enigmas? Because I'm interested again. My wife is doing great now. In fact, my mom, when she heard about this whole thing, said, well, I guess that means that Joe is doing well now because you wouldn't have bought it if she wasn't. It's like, yeah, absolutely. All right, so I said, do you have any enigmas for sale? He had 4 enigmas to choose from. Oh, this is awesome. So you know, he's sending me pictures of these things and the differences in them, and there's all kinds of things. And I ran to my closest friends and said, what should I do? Which one of these? It was just confusion. There were too many options. See, there's issues of machine serial numbers. Each machine itself has a serial number. Each rotor has a serial number as well. It is believed that the Germans made approximately 22,000 to 30,000 enigmas. 22,000 to 30,000. And you'll see the serial numbers. They go like, you know, A2200 or A18840 or A726. The A indicates that it was associated with the army there, and, well, the lower the serial numbers, the earlier it was in the war. These were weapons of war. They were used to encrypt messages, and they were often used in trenches, they were used in offices, they were used in all kinds of things, and they often got beat up and stuff like that. Also, you might have an Enigma machine that, say, had, you know, the 3 rotors in it that had the same serial number as the underlying box itself, and then your rotors get screwed up. But there's another Enigma right next to it that maybe the box got screwed up. So you could pop the rotors out of that one machine, put them into the other machine, and it would all work. Every rotor 1 was compatible with every other rotor 1. Every rotor 2 was compatible with every rotor 2, so they would often mix and match. It is believed today that there's about 200 to 250 enigmas that people know about today. 200 to 250. And a lot of them have mismatched serial numbers on the rotors versus on the underlying box itself. There's a lot of wear and tear on some of the 4 that they suggest to me. Rust, splotches. I mean, some of them were used in the rain. Some of them got kind of messed up. And it may seem petty, but one of the biggest issues was the color of the box itself. Wooden boxes, over 70 years, well, the color of the wood changes. Some of them age to this beautiful reddish brown. Others are kind of a sickly yellow color. And, you know, and I wanted something that would kind of look nice in the office. So I'm running this through all the different friends here. Oh, and then there's one other big issue here. His best Enigma, I mean, just a real precise, just beautiful machine. He was in the final stages of the negotiations with the Brazilians. Some folks from Brazil wanted to buy it and put it in a museum there. So he says, well, I have this one. It's really nice, but, you know, the Brazilians are going to buy this one. I blame that on Mike Poor because, well, it just seems appropriate, right? All right. And then there was this whole idea of, is this just insane? I mean, should we really go through this? So for about 3-4 weeks, I debated this with my friends, and, well, we came to some conclusions. Now, throughout the negotiations, I got to know Dr. Tom a whole lot better. He's an amazing guy. Dr. Tom collects enigmas as well as telegraphy keys. And one of the things that he does is he periodically travels to Germany and, well, quite honestly, he looks to see if there are recent deaths of East German bureaucrats. Okay? So they worked in East Germany. Remember, at the end of the war, they shipped a bunch of these boxes over to East Germany with the hopes that they would continue to use it, and the East German secret police did. Now, in the 1960s, when they finally retired the machines, they said to a lot of these bureaucrats, hey, just take the thing home. It's an old typewriter. We don't care. So a lot of them took these things home, and they sit in the attic. So you could read the obituaries. You see somebody that's passed away recently. You can call the family and say, I'm so sorry for your loss, but Grandpa may have left something in the attic that I can help you with. And he picks up 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 per year and sells them to collectors around the world. That's what he does. He's a fascinating guy. I mean, he's amazing.
Amazing.
All right?
Amazing.
Yeah, remember I said he's a retired college professor. He's very interested in education, technology, very interested in hacking, right? Josh and I were talking about some of the stuff that we do. He's very interested in history, as you might imagine. He's unusual. He's got a quirky sense of fun and adventure. He sent me his Christmas cards. Just so I can get to know the guy. Say, hey, Ed, check out my Christmas cards. Watch this. This is so awesome. These are his Christmas cards. He's got a picture of him with 5 enigmas dressed in a tuxedo. Because if he wasn't in a tuxedo, it just wouldn't work, right? It's just awesome. Look, you got little Santa Clauses back here on the mantelpiece. Here, the gentleman dresses in a Santa Claus suit, snow all over. He's got his Enigma machines. Oh, and this is a Soviet Falco crypto system. Very nice. He showed Josh and I that when we went to visit him. Now, that's a guy that knows how to celebrate the holidays, right? Could you imagine getting a Christmas card for something like this? Oh, man. Now, look, I can't really judge because here are my own Christmas cards for the last 2 years, okay? This is a Christmas card that actually, this is from back in 2010. It's got 3 Christmas tree scans, one from Nmap, one from HPing, one from Scapy. I sent this to my mom. She's like, oh, Ed, where did we go wrong? And then here you have Scoto Claus at the North Pole sending packets up to the machine I was able to locate that was closest to the physical North Pole as I scanned all those machines. Yes. All right. Anyway, Merry Christmas. Lovely. Okay. So he seemed like, you know, we were compatible from a sort of unusual sense of humor and interest. So we finalized the deal. The deal was for Josh Wright and I to drive up to his facilities and check out the different enigmas. We were really interested in A2200 as well as A726, okay? Now, it would be a 7-hour drive each way for me. So I was scheduled to leave the house at 5 a.m., drive up there, get there around noon. For Josh, a 4-hour drive each way. So Josh would drive 4 hours, get there around noon as well. Dr. Tom emailed me and said that he and his wife would serve us a delightful lunch. Delightful, yes.
Delightful.
They would show us the machines, we'd get to meet with them, talk with them, and we could pick whether we wanted A2200 or A726 and seal the deal and come home. The date was set, August 16th, 2012. All right? But then something happened. 3 days before the deal was set to commence, Dr. Tom sent me a most unusual email. You see, he had seen the office tour. Have you guys seen my office tour? I got kind of a weird office. My office has a secret room and a secret room. I got a picture of Einstein where you can go behind the picture and look out through the eyeballs and stuff. Yeah, okay, whatever. He saw the tour of my office and he said, Ed, I've been brainstorming about stuff that you have to have in your secret room. You know, obviously the Enigma would be a very nice highlight to have in your secret room, but I have another idea. Here's what he said, all right? And I just want to go through the exact text of this email because it's fascinating. This is what he wrote. You can see the sort of playfulness in his email. But in thinking outside the box about other things that might light up your secret room, I came across the idea of your having and showing off the earliest and most complex computer system ever designed. One that even Alan Turing admired. A system that the CIA and NSA and military are constantly trying to develop better techniques to hack into the system and that defies complete understanding to this day. And then he wrote in his email, what is it? And he had enter, enter, enter. What is it? He offered me a brain for the secret room. Yes, a human brain. Dr. Tom taught neuroscience and brain anatomy at a major Ivy League university. And he said that he had kept, for research and analysis and education purposes, some specimens. Yes, he had in his possession some human brains that he thought would be delightful in my secret room. All right, and he offered me one. So what do you say when a person offers you a human brain? Well, my reaction, well, thank you so much. So, because I didn't want to insult the guy. I mean, he's selling me an Enigma here. I didn't want to insult him. But you know, and here's what I wrote in my email back to him. It would kind of creep me out. Those words are important because they're going to come back later. It would creep me out to be sitting in my office having a disembodied human brain sitting in the room next to me. I mean, I have a suit of armor in my office. I imagine most people do. But when you first get a suit of armor in your office, it's kind of freaky because your mind assumes that that human form is like a person in your office. It took me 3 weeks to get used to the suit of armor kind of looking down at me as I worked, and now my brain just kind of understands that that's a piece of furniture. All right, so I said, look, I appreciate it, but we're going to have to pass on the human brain. My needs for human brains are fulfilled right now. Although I do like the idea, because I didn't want to insult the guy. I said, what we could do is we could get a jar and a fake brain, put some liquid in there, and write Abby Normal on the side so that we, fulfill the spirit of your concept, but maybe not the particulars of actually having a real human brain. So that's good, right? Excellent. So it was the day before we were to go to buy the Enigma. And Josh and I were doing the final planning for this thing. And it's like, well, you want to do this right. You want to do it in style. You want to have an adventure. What do you wear to buy an Enigma? I was thinking about this thing. So I called Josh on the phone, and I said, hey, Josh, I left him a voicemail because he was getting ready to teach a VLive class. So I left him a voicemail. I said, hey, Josh, I want to talk to you about wardrobe selection for tomorrow. Lovely, yeah. And he didn't answer, via the phone. Instead, he texts me back, and he says, what's going on, wardrobe, ? And I wrote, my specific question was whether my Enigma shirt would be over the top. All right, you ready? August 16th, 2012, Enigma Day. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's early in the morning. I get in my car as fast as I can. Josh left at 8 a.m. Lucky soul. And it was strange. I mean, we're driving out to the middle of nowhere. I mean, mountains and
I think it was the edge of nowhere.
The far edge of nowhere.
Far edge, yes.
And there was like a house in a ditch. Look at this very inviting country store. Oh, we filmed the whole thing, right? We're taking pictures and videos. Look at this very inviting country. It's a door. That's your country store. There's another house that I passed by. There's like garbage falling out of the house. You see, I'm so glad my good buddy Josh Wright came with me because I don't know if I would have done the trip by myself. I was a little bit nervous that the guy might be looking for more specimens, and I was and I believe I can run faster than Josh. So I wanted Josh to be there so that if he's looking for extra brains, I'm out of there. It's nice knowing you, Josh. All right. Okay. Now, when we get up there, he gives us directions. He says, you're going to cross a washed-out bridge. I mean, look, this is the edge of nowhere. You're going to cross a washed-out bridge, but don't worry, they built a temporary bridge over it. So Josh is kind of filming. And I keep driving, and I'm driving. I'm looking. Josh is in my rearview mirror. We drove in separate cars, obviously. And then I look back. I cross the washed-out bridge. I'm looking for the road. And he says, you'll see a temporary sign on the side of the road painted in red. I blocked out the name of his street name, just for anonymity's sake. He says, you'll see that. Turn right at that. So cross the bridge.
Nailed to a tree.
And it's nailed to a tree. So nailed to a tree, a hand-painted red sign that says my street name. Now, the thing of it is, I'm driving down the street. I look in my rearview mirror. Josh isn't there anymore. What the heck's going on? So I stop, wait a little bit. Josh doesn't show up. They got Josh. They've got his brain. Anyway, so I turn around, drive back, cross the bridge. Oh, Josh realized the instructions were actually a little bit off. You don't cross the bridge. It's the street just before the washed-out bridge. Okay, good. So we go up this scary road. This was amazing. When you go up this guy's road, I mean, it's a long road. It's over a mile long. And it's like a mountain on either side. We actually stopped on the road and looked over the edge, and it's like a whole mountain. He has a farm at the top of this mountain. All right. Anything to add there, Josh?
Just that I wasn't hoping to see so many red painted signs nailed to trees on my way there.
Yeah,
so
really.
The first one I saw, I took a right.
Yeah, he nailed it. Thank you. So we arrive, and it's a nice farmhouse. We pull up, and it's Dr. Tom and his wife, big smiles on their faces. The guys are here to buy the Enigma. And he takes us on a tour of his collection. He started by collecting telegraphy keys. And he has a whole bunch of different telegraphy keys, and he was showing us those. And then somebody said, well, you're very interested in telegraphy keys, including those of World War II. The telegraph keys were actually used to transmit messages encrypted with the Enigma. So somebody offered to sell him an Enigma years ago. And that's what got him started on this whole thing, and now he's an Enigma collector and a guy that sells this. So he takes us on a wonderful tour. His wife is taking photos of the whole thing. It was very sweet. Now, I said to him, okay, we've got this Enigma machine. It looks very beautiful. It's very nice, but I've got to test it to make sure it works. And he says, sure, feel free. Just type in whatever you want to type, and that's good. And I said, no. For me to test this, I brought my other Enigma machine. And I want to encode a message on my other Enigma machine, set up exactly the same way as this machine, and then decrypt the message on this machine. And he looks at me like, you have another Enigma machine? Well, yes. And I pulled out my iPad. And my iPad had an iPad app. It's $4.99. It's awesome. It's a beautiful Enigma implemented in an iPad. So I pop the sucker open, I configure the stecker, the rotors, everything exactly like the actual Enigma machine he has there, and I type in Josh X Wright. It encrypts it, then we take that same message and type it into the physical Enigma machine, and it decrypts to Josh X Wright. And I turned to Josh at this point, and I said, Josh, before that machine sitting on the desk was a box that looked like an Enigma. But for me, it just turned into a real Enigma. It's now real because it matches the implementation on my iPad.
Of that $5 Yeah.
Yeah, go figure. Now it's a real Enigma. Yeah, Josh made fun of me over that. Right, yeah. Okay, we had a truly delightful lunch. He promised us a delightful lunch. His wife harvested some fresh vegetables from their garden. She made gazpacho soup for us. It's delicious. Lots of cilantro.
Oh, lots.
It was just fantastic. And we had some stuff to drink, not alcohol, just a nice light lunch here. He had an Enigma mug that Josh used, and we had some nice sandwiches. And the lunch was served on very nice china plates. That will become important later. On nice china plates, you'll see what I mean. All right? Truly delightful lunch. Then it came down to decision time. He had A726 sitting there. Man, did that machine look beautiful. Very pristine. And we were talking with him, that A2200 looked nice too. Can we take a look at that? So we looked at A2200, we looked at A726, we set them down next to each other. And then I said, I need to take my most trusted advisor for a little walk. So I asked him, is there any place that we can go and just kind of go for a walk and have this discussion? So Josh and I went for a walk and discussed, which one should we do? A2200, A726, back and forth, back and forth. We finally come to the conclusion we should do A726. A2200 was nice, but it had a little bit of splotches and stuff, maybe some water damage, a little bit of rust, associated with its use in the war. So we decided on A726. So Josh and I are walking back to the house. Before we get to the house, I turned to Josh. I said, hey, Josh, should we ask him to see the brain? And Josh said, I don't know if we should ask him to see the brain. I said, well, if we don't ask him to see the brain, we'll always wonder what would happen if we asked him to see the brain. And Josh said, it's a good point. We should ask him to see the brain. Okay, all right. So we go in, we seal the deal, we shake hands, I give him the money, he gives me the Enigma machine, we got this picture here, I'm happy, yay, this is all exciting. There's Dr. Tom right there. And then after this is all done and we get some pictures of it, I didn't want to be imposing because you see his grandchildren were calling on the phone saying, are you ready yet? We were there with him for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours just talking about things and education and security and such. And his grandchildren are calling, and I didn't want to take him away from his grandchildren, but I did want to see the brain, or at least to see what would happen if we asked for the brain. So I said, look, Dr. Tom, if it's not too much to ask, can we see the brain? We don't want to take possession of the brain. No, not at all. We just like to see it. And here's what he said back to me. He says, I thought that would creep you out. He used the exact wording I'd used in my original email saying that would creep me out. I thought that would creep you out. And I said, it probably will. But we figured we just have to see it. He gets this big grin on his face and puts on these big yellow gloves. Yeah. He goes into the other room, reaches into a bucket, and pulls out a human brain. He walks back to us with a human brain, and he says to his wife, he says, I got to show the guys the brain. Get me a plate. I got to put the brain on a plate. So his wife goes and grabs him a plate. They put the brain on the plate, and I look at this plate and say, that's a nice china plate. And Josh comments, do the Josh Wright voice.
It's the same plate we just ate lunch on.
It was the same plate we just ate lunch on. Yeah, but he's pointing to it. He's like, here's where hearing happens. Here's where the visual cortex is. Here's all these different parts of the brain. Okay, this is nice. Then he looks up at me and he says, Ed, we've got to get a photo. A picture of you and me and the brain and the Enigma. That's what we got to do. So he asked his wife to go get the camera. He all excitedly runs into the other room and we get some pictures. Look at my expression Okay. There's me. There's Dr. Yeah, Josh is filming the whole thing. We got it. Oh my. It is so bizarre. He's so excited. He's so happy. Josh is filming the whole thing. And so, we're smiling as much as I can. I can't believe this is happening to me. But wait, it gets worse. So he's like, I don't think people will be able to see the brain quite right. So he starts like lifting the brain up so people can see a little better. And he's like, well, no, I got to tilt the plate. And his wife is taking pictures. So he starts tilting the plate. And then I look down, and I notice that there's some liquid dripping off of the plate onto the Enigma I had just purchased, okay? And I looked down and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's dripping all over the Enigma. Oh, I can't believe it. And I honestly freaked out. We captured it on camera. Stop and wipe it up. So I'm trying to wipe up the brain juice dripping on the Enigma. And his wife, well, he says, it's no big deal, it's okay. His wife says, oh, the Enigma's been through worse than that. It survived World War II. It'll be just fine. Well, in the meantime, I'm wiping up the brain juice, but the brain continues to drip. And it starts dripping on her table. So his wife starts freaking out. Oh my gosh, that's my best table. Now this is serious. So she starts wiping up the stuff. This was the most surreal thing that has ever happened to me in my life. Absolutely true story. Yeah. Would you care to add anything to that, Josh? All right, so in conclusion, the Enigma machine for me, and I think for Josh, I don't want to speak for him, but the Enigma machine for me is a symbol. It is a symbol of a flawed technology. Flawed technology, it's got security vulnerabilities in it. Security vulnerabilities in its implementation, security vulnerabilities in its use. And because of those vulnerabilities, really, really smart people worked really hard to actually fight against evil and to make the world a better place. That's kind of cool. The goal was defeating evil by hacking a flawed technology to which people had grown overconfident in its security. This is what we should strive for as information security professionals. At our best, that's what we should try to do, to find flaws, to exploit flaws, to fix flaws with the goal of trying to make the world a better place. So for me, the Enigma is a symbol of what we should all aspire to as InfoSec professionals. And the other sort of conclusion on this thing is, life is a strange adventure. I mean, enjoy it. There's cool stuff to be had out there. We could have, at any point in this journey, said, the brain thing's a little too weird, let's not do it. But we decided to do it, and it turned out that it was pretty cool. We put together a little movie trailer associated with this that I'd like to show you. Do we have the audio set up? It's good? So the speakers are going right now? If I put this down on the computer? Okay, good. So I'd like to show you the little trailer for the movie, okay? We put this together thanks to our friends over at Apple with iMovie, and here it is. Where is it? Okay. The epic Enigma movie trailer. Okay. Turn up my volume. Okay, here we go. Oh, go full screen. Very nice. And let's do play. And that is the presentation. Please keep your brain juice off my Enigma.